Um, I recognise that not everybody is as indefatigable as Shruti, and this is a very long session, so I'm going to be brief. First, to say thank you for inviting me to this. First of all, to say thank you for inviting me to this extraordinary place, Delhi, and to your extraordinary Congress. In equal measure, I think I have been, concerned and comforted. Comforted because the terrain which this conference and this session in particular has trod is very familiar. We had exactly the same debate back home. I think, however, your perspectives are not always the perspectives that we hear, so congratulations on that. They're ones that chime very, very much with myself. And concerned because we seem to make such little progress on these really important matters. We also, perhaps because I come from Ireland, recognise this perhaps post-colonial, arguably, but certainly Western industrialised model of education, which I know has been imposed upon your country as well, as absolutely the great sausage factory, where the whole educational system is something that, when you see the delight and the curiosity of a small child leaving to go to school on its first day, and then you meet them 15, 14 years later, and you say, what the heck happened to you? And the one thing they have in common is the formal educational system, which churned them out in that manner. And so that's something that we too share in common with you, in spite of our search for alternative forms of education which have not been mainstream. So I just wanted to say that is not reassuringly familiar, but familiar, and a source of continuing concern. I suppose the other point, and there have been many issues that have resonated for me, is we too have a debate. I come from the great Western tradition of Cartesian rationalism. So when I have been here listening to you, and actually the conceptualization of this conference, it reminds me hugely and forcibly that there is another great tradition that we have been deprived of, I think, for a long time in the West, certainly in my country. But I also come from the Celtic tradition of ancient Ireland, and it was very gratifying last night to hear Dr. Cavan Singh say that his favourite poets, certainly one of them was W.B. Yeats, and to hear him quote that from memory, much better than I could have done, though I did recognise the poem, so I was pleased at least about that. But the experience of emerging in a society which is coming out of conflict and sometimes being dragged back into it makes you question, I think, not only what is happening, but how we got ourselves there in the first place. And a great contributor to that, I believe, has been a segregated education system in our community, segregated along all the lines that you have described, but certainly in terms of what some might call ethno-nationalism, and I'm exaggerating perhaps a little, but you will get my drift. And when we talk about certitude and beliefs, I think often we walk down a very dangerous path, because one of the, and it was your point about knowledge and experience and many of the other speakers' points, is that that leads to conflict, because what I believe is superior to what you believe. And surely the whole point about learning and mentoring is really about the democratization and the liberation of the tools of knowledge and of learning. And that's something which is fundamentally important in our society. And I would like to say that whilst I enjoyed thoroughly the performance, but the language was universal. I didn't have to know what the words meant. I absolutely understood what was being communicated. And that universal language that the arts and dance, which Cyril explained so beautifully and evocatively, that universal language, I think, of the arts creates a very important, for me, potentially democratic civic space in our society where the arts never confirm prejudice, in my view. The best of the arts never do that. They always challenge, they always stretch the boundaries, they always interrogate, they problematize, they bring different perspectives, and they make you reflect, either through your senses, or intellectually, or emotionally, and they do that at their best at all those levels. So it's an extraordinary privilege to be able to witness and to share some of your artistic and cultural representation at this conference. And I just wanted to say thank you to Shruti for that. I just am amazed at Delhi on a personal level. I was talking to somebody and I just saw so many cultural contradictions and clashes in a crazy kind of a way. I'm struggling to make sense of it, and I mean sense as well as intellectual sense of it. But it is layer upon layer, I know, been densely accreted over many centuries. And it is an extraordinary privilege to, as I said, have a brief glimpse of it. And so the one thing that I think I take away from this is that, and it was a quote, and I'm maybe misquoting it, from Nelson Mandela, who said, "It is not that we are afraid of darkness, but we are afraid of our own brilliance." And it strikes me that that is the liberation that knowledge and education can bring, is that capacity to achieve and realize one's full potential that we're so bad at being able to deliver. But arts, I think, help. Thank you.